Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Today's Saturday, so yesterday was Friday. You following this? And yesterday was the main watering day, and I videoed watering that side of the grow room up to but excluding the Coelogynes. There were two reasons. The video was plenty long enough at that point, and that's quite a big set of orchids, and also I'd run out of water, so I wouldn't have been able to do them all without stopping and mucking about. So what I thought I'd do was mix up the water today, water and film them today, and that video can go in hand for a day next week. So you won't see it for a while, but when you're watching it, obviously it was filmed back on Saturday. To say, there's quite a few of these to get through. I'll have a chat about each one as we go, and might be a bit of tidying up to do on some of them, and yeah, a general chat as we go about looking after Coelogynes. They do have some quirks that make them different to other orchids, and some things you seem to have to put up with that you don't with other orchids necessarily. Let me just finish that because it's nearly cold anyway. Get it out of the way. Right, so I'll swing the camera around, and what I'll do is as I bring each plant over, we'll have a look at it, chat, and then get it watered. And what I do is I do a shelf, stack them up on the table, and then I'll break off, put them back, and then we'll get the other shelf. There's two shelves to do, so right, let's get this camera around somewhere where you can see what's going on, and I can still see what's going on. Something like that, I think. Let's have a look. Yeah, that'll be okay. That's the majority of the table and the bowl. This is the bowl I use for watering. That's just the feed that lives in there. Keep them separate. Right, let's get going. Right, this is a relatively young plant. This is granulosa with an X in front of it because it's a naturally occurring hybrid. Latest two leads are producing new growths. Both of those are in the air, so if they produce roots, these might get down into the pot, but I would probably have to get some soil or some media up there. Both of those leads have flowered. Bulbs are not too badly shriveled. That is the problem I get with Coelogynes, is their bulbs. The old bulbs tend to shrivel. Now this has got a good pot full of roots. This is not bad at all. So we've got two new growths on two leads where the plant has split, and a nice set of roots, and a lot of these are actively growing. So this is an active set of roots on previous bulbs, not on the latest two growths coming out here. But they are going to be growths, they're not spikes. Those bulbs have already bloomed. So now today I'm doing the Coelogynes on a separate run, and this might be the day I make the decision that they will always be on a separate run, and we'll probably discover together the reason why as we go round. When I do my big run, and I do most of the orchids, they have quite a gap between them. Most of them need to be almost or dry in between watering, and they get an absolute soak. So it's not always practical. Now that is absolutely covered in, difficult to say what. Could be scale, it's more likely to be mealybugs, but they're right down in there. Whatever they are, they need to come out. I think that's mealybugs. It's probably one adult and some youngsters, you know, where it's let me just go and get my Oh, I was going to say, I was going to go and get my bug spray, but I've got the alcohol here, that will do just as well. As although it's bad, it's only in one place on the plant, so it's not all over the place. I haven't got an outbreak as such. Right, so this one, again, older bulbs quite badly shriveled. The latest one isn't. Yeah, the latest one has produced roots and they have gone down in the pot. And that's Moriana magnifica, the type magnifica. So it was a named version of that one. This is a relatively small division, but it's rooting in well. And the trouble is, you see, when you make a division, you disturb the roots, and a lot of coelogynes not only don't like their roots disturbed, they will sulk. And some of them can sulk for up to 2 years, where they just do nothing. They won't grow, they won't produce roots, and they're difficult to keep going if they decide to do that. But anyway, this had its roots disturbed, so it didn't hydrate very well until it got the new growth, and the new growth produced a load of new roots. That new bulb is nicely hydrated and therefore is not shriveled. Now this is my only coelogyne that I haven't repotted yet. Again, older bulbs shrivelling. I think I may need to do something about this. It's got 3 new growths on it, pushing on. Those will produce roots eventually, and this is, well, it's got Orchids on the label, but that was renamed quite a long time ago as Nitida or Nitida. That was in bloom up until quite recently, but again, the older part of the plant is sort of dehydrated. Now, last time I had a good look at my coelogynes, or maybe the time before, I was on about the dehydration of some of the bulbs, and somebody just simply said in a comment, "You're not giving them enough water." Do you think that's obvious by now? And we've only done 3. This is why I've come to the conclusion that these need a separate run. They need to be watered, certainly in the growing season and the warmth, a lot more frequently than they're getting now, which means they have to come out of the main run and have a separate run. So at the moment I've got separate runs for the Phalaenopsis in the kitchen. Somebody's asked for a video on those. I will do one probably next week. The Pleonies are on a separate run, the Cymbidiums are on a separate run, and so are the Mounts. Now the Cymbidiums aren't huge in number, although that is quite a chore doing them because of the bulk. They're so big and bulky. Oh, this is a nuisance, this one. The clear pot is exactly the same size as the black pot, so it's difficult to get over the rim to pull it out. Now this is Speciosa, and that's the variety Burnham. Now this has got a pot full of roots. The older part of the plant is nowhere near shriveled like a lot of them. It has ridges. This is not shriveling. Yeah, the older bulbs naturally have ridges, ribs, whatever you want to call them. But the latest growths on here have produced roots. I've got an absolute pot full of roots. I've got actively growing roots. This one's doing fine. This one's doing fine. It's even got roots coming out the bottom of the pot. Right, now as far as looking after coelogynes are concerned, in the main they are quick growers. Some are classed as cold growers. Now most will tolerate some heat, but they have a way of tolerating it which is not ideal, but at least they survive, they don't go down. What they do is they shut down. So they stop growing effectively, they stop doing anything at all, they just close down. They're not dying, but they're not progressing. And if you've got one like this, for instance, whose new growths are pushing on quite nicely, and that's its only green foliage, and it decides it's too warm and it's going to stop growing, that's not going to do those new growths much good, unless it's for such a short period that they can then push on again later when it cools down a bit. So this is a young plant. This is Usitana crossed with salmony colour. It's got two new growths, neither of which have started producing their roots yet, but the previous bulbs have. But they've also lost all their leaves. Again, we have slightly ribbed older bulbs, not shriveled, despite having no leaves. And I've got reasonable roots on that one. I wouldn't say that is a really active root system, but there's more than enough roots to support that plant. So that one's to grow on. I can't remember whether I bought it in bloom. I'm pretty sure I got that off of a member of the Devon Orchid Society who was selling a few plants at Burnham's Orchid Fair, which they have in July, which I'll be going to in a couple of weeks with Hannah. So there may be some more plants for sale. Right, next. The time I come over here, the fragrance of that Miltoniopsis hits me. And this is one of my biggies. Nowhere near as big as it's going to get, that's for sure. And this is in a black pot without a clear pot inside. And this is Moriana magnifica. Again, this is the mother plant that the division came off of. There were two divisions, the other one I either gave away or sold. Now this one has quite, I don't know whether I can hold them both up so that you can see them. If you look at the older bulbs on this, that's shriveled. This is what I'm on about. Oh, leaf straight on the camera lens. This is shriveled. This, if you can see through there, is ribbed. There is a distinct difference. Now this one has lots of new growths. Here, 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 and here. So it has plenty of new growths pushing on. Starting from round there, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 new growths on there, and I just spotted another outbreak. Yeah. There's at the base of, I don't know whether I'll be able to show you, at the base of this bulb here, see the white? Yeah, I don't want to knock them because they will fly. I don't mean fly as in with wings, they will fall off and go elsewhere and then I won't get them. There's a few down there as well. Yeah, don't believe these have come in because the door's been open. I just believe these have transferred off another plant probably and got going because of the good conditions for them at the moment, which is the nice warm humid weather that they've got in here, provided nicely for them by me. Anyway, big plant, old bulb shriveled, most of them have kept their leaves, it's got lots of leaves and it's got many new growths coming, and I can see that the previous growths have pushed down into the pot with their roots, so I believe there is a good pot full of roots. I can't definitely say because I can't see them, but I think it's doing okay. Plank. And this one takes quite a bit of water, this one. I'm not sure this has ever been repotted. Oh, hang on, it must have been. If I've had divisions off of it, although I've got a niggle that I actually duplicated this one by mistake. I was looking round at Burnham's for something to bring home in flower, you know, so that you good people had some new orchids to look at. And I believe I picked up one of these in flower, and when I got home I thought, I'd blow it, I've already got one. So this could be the mother plant, and then the other plant was the one that got divided. Anyway, a biggie. And then the last one on this shelf, and have a little break while I put everything back. I've got a feeling that camera's a bit low down. Probably chopping the top of the plants off, because you don't really want to see them on the table, you want to see them when I'm showing them to you, don't you? Right, now this is Lawrenciana. This one doesn't grow very well for me. It has got some roots, but they don't show much. It is very dehydrated, it's got some good leaves, and the latest growths aren't as dehydrated as the old part of the plant. Nonetheless they're not ribbed, and this has one new growth at the moment. I think the other new growths have matured, but it's not hydrating very well because it hasn't got a good root system. It's got plenty of leaves and obviously not a lot of new growth going on, but with that number of leaves it needs a good root system to hydrate it and keep it, and support it, which I don't think it's getting. I can see another new growth coming up there as well, right from the back of the plant. That's unusual. Literally from the back end of the plant on a leafless bulb. That's very unusual. Anyway, not having many roots and perhaps drying out too much because of the gap in the watering schedule. By changing that, this one might perk up. I'm having a good look at this one as I water, because there's a little bit of cobwebs. And after the rather nasty looking couple of spiders I found when I was watering on Friday, got squished immediately, I'm keeping my eye out. There are spiders in here that I'm quite happy with. I know them, I know the type, they don't get any bigger, all that sort of stuff. These did not look right. They didn't even look as though they were from this country, quite honestly. And you have to bear in mind, this is thoughts, not proof and no evidence. But when you get plants coming in from foreign lands, like the Far East in particular, I'm thinking of here, to come into the EU and then be transported around, and possibly over here, they need a phytosanitary certificate, which actually says they are clean, clear from bugs and any diseases, and they're supposed to be individually inspected. And the guy I bought a couple of plants from at the NEC was, I bought one from a guy from either Ecuador or Peru, so South America. It's a spidery place, not as bad as Australia, but yeah. And I bought some plants off the guy from the Far East, either Thailand or Taiwan. Again, spidery places these are. Now, those plants would have been treated to ensure they were free of insect pests and things like that. And what was used was probably some form of insecticide. Insecticides don't kill spiders. They're not insects. You need something different and a bit special to wipe those out chemically. So it is remotely possible that spiders could get transported with plants coming in from foreign climes. It is possible, I believe, but that's a theory. I have no evidence and no proof. Maybe I squashed 2 elements of proof back on Friday. Who knows? Anyway, I certainly didn't like the look of them, and if I see any of those again, they will go. Anyway, so that's that shelf done. I'll break off, put them back, and then we'll start on the last shelf. Right, this is my convoluted solution to a problem orchid. This is my cristata. The problem is that the plants split right back here. So even though these are old bulbs and a bit shriveled, that's where the plants split. So if I take the older bulbs off, I end up with 2 plants, which weakens them. I'd rather keep it as a single plant, hence the convoluted. I cut some edges off of the pots and then used my glue gun to sort of bind them together again. and this is wired down to try and encourage some new roots to grow from the rhizomes, because from here forward all of that part of the plant had no roots. It had some few not very good roots here. So the idea of clamping it down is that new roots should grow at least from the latest two growths, which are pushing on, should open their leaves soon, which is good. That will double the leaf mass on the plant, because the previous two bulbs have leaves and none of the others have. It's recently been repotted. There's still no sign of new roots around the front end of the plant. No sign at all. And the old roots were quite, not dead, but very tired looking, and certainly not active, no growing tips. So again, I think that although this plant doesn't have many leaves and therefore doesn't need as much hydration as it would if all of these bulbs had leaves on, then it would need a lot more hydration to keep everything going. But nonetheless, it's not getting as much as it needs. And by keeping it more damp, I mean this is bone dry. If I kept this a bit more moist permanently, I think it might encourage those new roots at the front end of the plant. It keeps drying out. So that's that one. Certainly don't want to lose that. That's a bit special because of what it is and where it came from. We've done that story enough times. Right, now this, got a leaf that needs coming off. Bright yellow. Well, nice autumn colours actually. Well, we don't need it. Now this plant has two leads on it. Has it got two? No, it hasn't. It's got one. It just blooms from two places. And this is in two pots, one on top of the other, simply because I dropped it and the pot broke. But most of what was the plant and the roots stayed inside it, even though it was broken. So I just put it inside another one to save disturbing it any further. Now, this is the latest new growth. As you can see, these are enormous leaves, absolutely enormous. So potentially this is going to be a giant of a plant. Old part of the plant is slightly shriveled, but if you look at the other bulbs here, these are ribbed. This is what I mean by ribbed. That is starting to shrivel. So it's not getting as much hydration as it ought to, but it has a pot full of roots. Therefore it's got to be drying out too quick, hasn't it? Or it's not getting watered frequently enough. We've sort of established that now while going round today. Sometimes things are blatantly obvious and I take no notice of them because I'm here on my own, and when I'm doing a main watering run, I class that as being quite busy. And I like to get those jobs over and done with. I like to get everything ready, make a start and push through, and then take a break when I'm done. That's how I like to work. While I'm working like that, things like that pass me by. Even though I see them, they don't register enough to do anything about it. But now, because I'm stopping and talking about the plants as we go along, it's now registered that these need watering more often. How more often I will judge, bearing in mind we're in a bit of a heat wave coming up now, so it's going to be warmer in here than it would normally be. Although today there's not a break in the clouds yet, so the heat hasn't started. Right, this is another one. This had relatively plump bulbs when I got it, but it didn't have good roots. It was a division, and that's what often happens. Like I said, you divide it and it sulks, and when you divide it you don't necessarily get a good root system on the division, which is what happened with this one. Now this is Coelogyne, and it has a lovely new growth at the front. This one again has had to be played with. It's got a pin over the rhizome, well, turn it around that way because this bulb's flat down. There, to hold that rhizome down, this plant was like that. And this back bit here was the only bit in the pot. The rest of it was sticking out in the air. And some of them do try and grow like that. But anyway, I potted it like this, got the rhizome down, you know, in some media, pegged it, but again, all of the roots are on these back two bulbs. This long piece of rhizome here has no roots, and I'm not sure this bit has. Let's have a little dig. Yes, there are roots coming off of that latest growth. So going down into the pot, invisible, because it's lined, I had to put moss around this to stop the media falling out the gaps. That's the only reason the moss is there. It's not. In fact, it probably doesn't help with hydration because it dries out first and sucks all the moisture out of the bark. But again, very shriveled old bulbs. I mean, that is ridiculous. That's lost all of its energy, but it hasn't lost its leaves yet. Still got leaves. And again, if you look at the size of the leaves on the previous growth, they're enormous. And the latest growth is now pushing on its 2 leaves. Most Coelogynes have 2 leaves on the bulb. Some only have 1, I believe. I don't think I've got any of them. I don't think there are any that have more than that. Now I have to give this a really good soak, especially round the outside where the moss is, because if the moss isn't absolutely soaking wet, it will draw the moisture out of the bark. And this is already not hydrating as well as it should. See, now this has got a tiny little spider. He can stay. Well, he's not doing any harm at all. Possibly doing some good if he's eating bugs. Although they'd have to be tiny for him to get anything. That body is probably 1 millimetre long. But he's not doing any harm. He's probably doing good rather than harm. This one takes a while to water. Wouldn't take anywhere near as long if I watered it more often. Duh. So when I get back and I get to my notes, I'm going to set up each set of orchids that has a separate watering cycle has its own section at the bottom of my notes where I say what the feed was, what the pH was, and the date that it was actually last applied. And I keep a record of 2 or 3 entries, sometimes 4. The added extra entry will be because there was a CalMag run, and I like to keep that available until the next one so that I can see the gap, because I don't want that happening too often. I don't want it not happening, but I don't want it happening too often. But these are going to get set up with their own watering cycle, and it will come round a lot quicker than the rest. Another biggie, the size of these leaves. This is the problem with some of the Coelogynes, they can become enormous. Now, if you look at this one, classic example, a division, the old bulbs that were the main part of the division are really badly shriveled, they've all still got their leaves, they're enormous, and it pushed out 2 new growths. That's what the bulbs should look like, not like the ones behind. Yeah, and again, nice big strong new leaves. But the reason those 2 bulbs are nice and plump is obvious when you look at the pot. It's a massive root section, and many of those roots have come off the latest growth, so they stay hydrated. I want to keep them hydrated, so they need watering more often. Perfectly logical, I just haven't got round to it basically. But I will deal with it now. The trouble is, once the bulbs get shriveled, not just ribbed, once they get to that shriveled state, you can't plump them up again, they won't come back. Or very rarely do they ever come back. If they don't go too far, you start hydrating the plant a bit better before they go too far, then you can keep them and they will plump up a bit. But yeah, so what was that one? So I forgot to say what it was. That was, I think I forgot to say what the previous one was as well. The previous one was, no, it was Holochila. I did say what that one was. Remember the word. This one came from Arthur at Burnham's out of his private collection that Sarah allowed him to do at the Orchid Festival, so there might be some of Arthur's plants this time. And it's Mem Louis Forget, French, so probably a Eric Young Foundation hybrid originally. But it starts with Mem dot, and that means in memory of. So it was named in memory of Louis Forget. And it's a bit of a biggie. I say biggie, but it's all relative. When you get to Burnham's, there's a section of the nursery, not the sales area, and you're walking through like a jungle, and you don't stop and think what you're walking past. What you're walking past is Coelogynes in dustbins. They're 6-7 foot tall. That's a biggie. You definitely don't want one of them in the grow room. Ugh. Right. Where have we got to? This is another one in a black pot that hasn't been repotted. Badly shriveled this one, but lovely strong new growths pushing on, pushing out roots with nice new shiny green leaves. Yeah, that camera is a bit low. Let me twist it again. There's only 2 plants left, but it's because the plants are so big. I mean, yesterday, Friday, when I did the other watering, it was fine like that. So as you can see on this one, the older part of the plant is quite shriveled, but the new growths are pushing on nice and strong, and they have roots, and there's many of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, another one there, 6, and then another big one here, 7. So 7 new growths on that plant. That was originally a division that's gone mad. Normally a division will be quite slow to move on and probably only have 1, maybe 2 leaves. That one's chucked out new growths in all directions. It's an absolute monster, and it can stay in the pot for this set of new growths only because they're all near the edge. So there won't be room for the next set of new growths. It will have to come out of the pot. And again, this is one I haven't repotted. Now this is another one that's got Mem at the start of the name, and it's William Micholitz, and it's the variety Burnham, yeah? And it's an awarded plant, got an award of merit at an RHS event sometime. When that happens, it only happens once. The plant gets put in for RHS judging, it gets an award, at which point it can get a name. That's the Burnham bit in quotes at the end. That's only, you know, can only do that if you get an RHS award. So when you see one like that, it's because it was awarded. But that's its only award. But every division or plant that's produced from seed of that awarded plant retains the name. So if you split that plant up into 4, you've now got 4 awarded plants, even though they weren't individually awarded. That's just the way the naming thing works. So very old part of the plant, very shriveled. New parts, the new growths pushing on nicely. Plenty of nice new roots going down in the pot, and enough room for those growths. Pour the water on the floor, why don't you? That happens sometimes. I go to pour the water in the pot, and it goes on a leaf, and the leaf hangs over the edge of the pot, so most of it goes straight on the floor. It adds to the humidity, makes the floor dirty, and tough, that's how it is. Right, one more after this one. So this is a big plant, lots of new growths, opening their new leaves, doing fine. Even though the old part is badly shriveled, there's nothing I can do about that. You know, that happened. It's old old history. It has happened, there's nothing I can do about it. All I can do is stop it happening on the latest new growths. Now I'm not going to bring this one over in its tray because I haven't got running out of room here. Now this is another incredibly badly shriveled plant. It's becoming a habit, isn't it? And again, the shriveled part has had it. And the way it was sliced to actually produce the division is not exactly elegant. And this is Moriana. This is Moriana, just the species, not any of the awarded plants. Moriana has been awarded many times and has many different names, you know, depending on the award in question. I've just seen another little outbreak on the end of one of the old bulbs, so we will get at that now. Any more anywhere? One there. And two there. That'll do. That's not classed as an outbreak. Yeah, so a badly shriveled old part of the plant. Again, like I say, nothing I can do about it. But the new growths are reasonable. The new growths are staying reasonably plump. Again, this plant has not got good roots. The roots that you can see down here are old, tired and not active. There is no growth tips. Now the new growths are starting to produce some roots, and providing they get down into the pot and get going, then it will keep those new growths plumped up. Why on earth that got potted like that, I still do not know, because this part of the plant should have been right up against the pot. But luckily this latest set of new growths has got room round the other side of the pot, so it's not going to get disturbed. Now obviously this one doesn't like disturbance because the original division was badly shriveled. So again, I think this one will benefit from getting watered more often. Simple as that. And I do have a problem. Well, I've got many, but this one in particular. This very small seedling bark that I got, I've used in places to try and encourage root growth, because obviously it's much finer and should in theory stay wet longer. But sometimes it's a pig to hydrate. You've seen me pour water all over that pot. I've got to be careful where I move now because I'm going to drip. Look, that area there is bone dry. The water's not getting down through that seedling bark, which means there's areas of the pot staying dry. So I have to just keep going until I see that part become wet, which means it takes a lot longer than it should do. And they are a nuisance. But I just have to keep looking at where those dry spots are and just keep pouring until they eventually become wet. Which they are now. And then make sure the back end of the plant gets plenty of water as well. And that's where the old tired roots are. So not a good plant. That's never going to look a good plant. You know, that would, you know, if all of those new growths came into bloom and produced a spectacular blooming, I still wouldn't take it to a show with the back end looking like that, because it's a lousy looking plant. It looks awful. You can't take a plant to a show just based on the blooms, although some people do. They do get marked down for it as well. There are points mainly for the blooming. Number of blooms, quality of blooms, size, colour, all that sort of stuff. That's where most of the points are. But there are points for the culture and the plant itself. How well has it been grown? Does it look like it should for that particular plant? So you can get marked down quite badly for a not so good looking plant. Anyway, that was the last one. So that's the Coelogynes, and as you can see, some of these are getting a bit big, which is why they're on the top shelf. And as long as I've got top shelves for them to go on, they can gain height, you know, okay. the problem you get with Coelogynes is most of them are not deep rooters. They become wide, shallow plants by nature, and finding the right sort of pots for them is not that easy, because if the pots are too deep, then the bottom half of the pot will be too wet too long, and that can especially mess them up in winter time, you know, when they need to be drier. So they don't grow much in winter. So in the main, Coelogynes are cooler growers, cool to cold. There are a few warmer growers, but not many. You'd have to look specifically at each plant to work that out, look it up and all that sort of stuff. There are a lot of species and nowhere near the vast number of hybrids that you get in a lot of other types of orchids. You take cymbidiums or worse still cattleyas. Number of hybrids is impossible to determine, there's so many, and as fast as you say there's 4,970, someone's just produced another one, so you can't do it. But with Coelogynes there are hybrids, but they're not as forthcoming as in some of the other genera. So you can look for hybrids. If you want to know how to grow those, then look up the species that went into them and have a look at that. But it is quite important to have a quick look at the species you've got, because some of them do need something, you know, some of them don't like bright light, some of them quite like bright light. That's quite a difference, you know. Some don't like being blasted by a fan, they like stiller air. Some need constant airflow. So yeah, you need to do a little bit of work, just to, you know, just to try and make sure you've got them in the best place you can have them for the type of plant you've got. But then I will say they're quite tolerant, apart from the root disturbance, which some of them are really not tolerant of. Apart from that, they're quite easygoing plants. As I said, they have a reaction to, if they're too warm for a longer period of time than they would like, they will stall. They just stop growing. You need to be aware of that in summer months like now. Yeah? Now, we've had 2 heat waves already, but they haven't been that long, so I haven't had to adjust. If I get a heat wave that goes on for 2 months, then 2 consecutive watering cycles will have no feed in, because they won't be growing. They'll have shut down. They'll have said, I'm going to just survive, I'm not happy, but I will try and survive. So they stop. So there's no point in pouring a lot of water and feed in, because they're not going to use much of it. They need enough just to stay hydrated. And you can do them a world of good if you're in that situation by actually using a sprayer and keeping the plants moist. So there we go, Coelogynes. Relatively new genus for me. The collection has grown just over the last couple of years. I've always had 1 or 2. I mean, I had a cristata a hell of a long time ago. It grew into quite a big plant, and that went to somebody at the Devon Orchid Society. They saw it in one of the videos. I was selling a group of plants and they said, I'll have that one. That person, that's Sean, gets a big tick for nothing to do with orchids, although it is slightly relevant. The journey from here to Burnham's goes past the grazing cow just outside Honiton, and that's where Sean arranged to meet in the car park to take the plants that he'd bought off of me. He also said this is a great place for breakfast, so we used it and we had breakfast there. And I think on virtually every trip to Burnham since then we've stopped there for breakfast, because it is good. It's becoming a little pricey, but for what you get it's excellent, and it's still one of the best cups of coffee you can get anywhere. So that's where we often stop and have our breakfast, which means our journey has to be adjusted to get there as close to opening time as possible, because they don't open till 9. We're normally going to Burnham's on a Saturday. I now know that on Saturdays they can open as much as 20 minutes earlier than that. So I would be prepared to get there that much earlier, knowing that if the staff are in, they open the door. Simple as that. So you can get in early, which means Burnham's open at 10, you get there for 10, you know, so it all works out quite well, which is probably what we will do on Saturday when we go, not today, even though you're watching this up in the week, but it's getting filmed on Saturday. So not the Saturday coming, that's an Orchid Society meeting, it's the one after that I'll be going to Burnham's. And we may well stop there for breakfast. It's just me and Hannah at the moment. Lynn's got another thing on, so she won't be coming. If those circumstances change, she'll probably join us and get a lift. She often does. But, anyway, so that's my Coelogyne collection and a few words about them. As I say, the worst thing is overcoming the problem with repotting and root disturbance, especially when you buy a recent division and all the bulbs look nice and plump and you think, oh, that's a nice healthy looking plant, and in 6 months all the bulbs have shriveled because it was a recent division, it didn't have a good enough root system and it stalled. So it didn't hydrate from that point and the bulbs just shriveled, you know. And then you've got to wait for new growths and make sure those are okay and don't shrivel. Eventually you remove the older parts of the plant as the years go on, and those older shriveled bulbs disappear, and you should end up with all your nice plump ones that you've grown yourself with roots, you know. So that's how they ought to go. Best laid plans and all that. Anyway, thanks for dropping by and all that. Don't forget your thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, yes, it would be nice if you did so. It don't cost anything. It's just a tick box. And thanks for being around and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.